Hello, Mark. Welcome to PolkaWorld interview.
Thank you, Kristen. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm very happy to have the opportunity to meet with our friends from Chinese community. So maybe first, there are a lot of stuff, happen to you, very great and exciting stuff happen to you, like you you have established your fund and started a project or a lot. And, there are a lot of stuff going on about you. So I think first we can talk about, when did you first get involved in Polkadot ecosystem?
Okay, happily. Thank you. So my background is on Wall Street and then the financial markets. So I started my career back in 94, long time ago, actually on Wall Street in the institutional bond market. I moved into hedge funds in the year 2000. Moved to Europe in 2003 to work for a bank where we invested in hedge funds. In 2015, I left there and got involved in a startup in investment management. And so we ran our own hedge funds, but we also made a few venture investments. And one of those venture investments was into a company called Grid Singularity. So maybe you've heard of Energy Web, which is a new parachain on Polkadot.
Yes.
So I became friendly with the founder, Ewald Hesse, and on his co-founder list was Gavin Wood, Aaron Buchanan, a few others. And so I invested in that in about early 2016.
Well, it's really
and
early.
got to know, yeah, so it's a company that was going to use blockchain technology, but I hadn't invested in blockchain yet. I looked at Bitcoin in 2010. It was really hard to invest in it, so I didn't. And it's a pity because I set aside 9,000 euros to buy 1,000 Bitcoin, but I didn't pull the trigger. And then Ed told me to buy Ethereum because they were going to be doing great stuff, but the price was already $8, so I missed it because I think the ICO'd at $1. But then I saw the opportunity of being in the cutting edge, or what they call the bleeding edge, the very far front of technology where it's very risky, but the rewards are very high. And with a background in asset management, I said, wouldn't it be great to start a vehicle that traditional investors could access, like in a traditional way, a vehicle that they would be familiar with, but then have blockchain as the investment. So I asked Ed if he would partner with me, and he said, yes, absolutely. And he asked a few friends if they would want to join on the blockchain side. 5 or 6 people he asked. All of them said no, except for 2. One of them was Aaron Buchanan, the original chief operating officer of the Ethereum Foundation. And the other one was Gavin Wood, who at that time was the co-founder of Ethereum and the original CTO of Ethereum. It was before Polkadot had officially launched.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you enter into the industry very early, and you have the opportunity to buy very cheap for Ethereum and Bitcoin.
Well, we'll see, but I didn't buy. I saw it, but I didn't pull the trigger because I didn't understand it well enough. And by the time I did, it was not OG anymore, but it was still early G. Let's say, like starting a fund in 2017 when we finally got everything launched and off the ground. And so we were in the very first private round of Polkadot, Energy Web, Ocean Protocol, and a few others. But Polkadot was by far the biggest one, or became the biggest. And because of having a monthly meeting with Gavin, Ed, and Aaron, we got very familiar with the ecosystem, and we saw the potential there. So the first fund did pretty well, made around 20 times that it paid out to investors. And we launched a second fund in early 2022, which is the active fund we have now, which is fully invested as the beginning of 2024. And it started out as a multi-chain investment vehicle, but we gravitated toward Polkadot because of the technology, because of the potential. So we ended up investing most of the fund in the Polkadot ecosystem, and actually became like champions of the Polkadot ecosystem within and also outside.
Polkadot really, performed very well in last cycle, but in this cycle, Polkadot technology works very well, but there are emerging sectors like Bitcoin layer 2 and Ethereum layer 2. They have, at least they got attentions. So why you continually focusing on Polkadot and optimistic about Polkadot?
Right. So at this point, Polkadot is a contrarian investment. So a contrarian investment means you're investing not with the crowd, but even against the crowd. And if you're a contrarian in your investing strategy and you end up being right, then the rewards are much, much higher because the others have to switch and then come your way. And that sends the price up even better than if everybody was in a trade already. And so there's that aspect. But the real reason is because of the fundamentals. So no other technology has the fundamental principles of Polkadot and also those principles put into practice. So yes, it has been challenging on Polkadot from the price point of view. And yes, also on some of the technology decisions, like the parachain model looked good on the drawing board, but in practice, probably you've heard Gavin mentioning it many times in his recent talks about Jam, but the persistent, word is escaping me right now, separation of state, right? So it's hard to have it, have all of the parachains share a state. They're not set up to do that. And so now the next evolution to Jam, which will take something like a year at best and maybe longer than that. And in the meantime, Polkadot is still improving, right? With asynchronous backing and agile core time and these auctions for core time that will be coming. The parachain slot won't be necessary, but each chain built on top of the relay chain will still have its own logic and its own state, and then they'll still be separate from the state of the other parachains, except for when XCM channels are open. So I'm talking about a lot of technical things and very specific things to Polkadot. So if somebody's not really into Polkadot, maybe we'll have to have a glossary or links to explain for those that are interested but are not that deep into it, the kind of topics that I'm talking about. But anyway, to make it straightforward, really, we're in Polkadot because of the technology and because of the true potential of building on that.
Yeah, you are a technology believer.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, technology is what's responsible for the improvement of the human condition. So globally, and there's a very good book. Well, there's many very good books on the topic, but one of them is The Sovereign Individual, which talks about the different types of governments built on the different types of economic systems. But also just Homo sapiens, I think, is another book that talks about the human condition, and global GDP for hundreds, if not thousands of years was based on the farming yield. So if you had good year for weather, good crops, the GDP went up by some small percent, and then you could accelerate it by conquering your neighbor and stealing their people and stealing their stuff. But it was mostly zero sum. And then the technology revolution started, and then you could get much more out of an economy by technological growth, first in industrial stuff, but now also in digital. And now everybody, look at the quality of life that even an average person has across the world is better than kings lived, only 200 years ago. And that's why we want to invest in technology.
Yeah, technology is a great factor to consider, but investing and the technology, they are separating. They are totally different logic. Investing, time is much more important. Bitcoin have the best technology, but not everybody can make money from Bitcoin. So I think the same as Polkadot. Jam chain is a great revolution. From my understanding, and Jam chain gonna be launched next year, and probably will miss the market. So do you think that the launch of Jam chain might miss the bull market? And how do you balance the timing and the talk and the technology?
Yeah, that's a very good, so I think market timing is very, very difficult. There's so many factors that go into it, and then so many surprises. Like, who expected COVID would be the biggest driver of prices and technology, and who could have predicted COVID would come and all the subsequent effects. So I think I don't feel confident to time the market. So we invest over a longer time frame and invest in what's fundamentally sound, which means that it will still be alive in 3 years and in 5 years, and hopefully in 10 years and 20 years, which means that it will hit the cycle and it will be good eventually, because markets go in cycles, as you said. So if the bull cycle is in 2025, maybe it'll be the end of 2024, maybe it'll be 26, but it will come. A lot of technology investing is looking forward and not looking at what there is today, right? You wouldn't invest in almost any blockchain if you just looked at what they're capable of today. The prices are based on what they will be capable of. So as Jam gets to be more defined, and we can see what the potential will be of Jam as it gets closer, I think the market can look at it and have an appropriate price for the potential of what this will be able to deliver. So it's, a lot of the market is not, it's looking forward. I don't want to use the word FOMO, but in the end, that's what it ends up being in crypto.
Yes. Jam is a great opportunity for Polkadot ecosystem, and if the timing, time is hard to say, so we have to stay longer, right?
But what we know about Jam is that it will use the Polkadot token, so that's already been defined. The actual implementations have not been defined, but what Jam does, which is really wonderful in my opinion, Polkadot was created to address the weaknesses in Ethereum, but it lost some strengths of Ethereum in creating Polkadot, one of which is the composability and shared state that everybody would just build on Ethereum. Polkadot created these parachain verticals that you had to build on the parachains, but that ended up being much more difficult in practice than in theory. And so Jam goes back to taking the best from the Ethereum design, which Gavin actually designed as the original CTO and writing the technical specification known as Yellow Paper for Ethereum, but also opens it up. Because one of the things that Gavin spoke about as well is that kind of parity became the source of knowledge for Polkadot, and that ended up being a blocker from third parties coming to build cool stuff on Polkadot. They can only build on parachains and not on the base layer. So Jam will have 3, what the word is, not instances, but 3 implementations, sorry. We'll have 3 implementations in different languages, and to have real redundancy and real openness to have others come and build on it. So that'll be cool. And so it needs to be performant, and businesses need to see the benefits for their business. And I think that's what one of the big weaknesses of Polkadot has been as well. So there are a few parachains that have been extremely successful, but they're not advertising Polkadot, they're advertising their own brands. So 2 that come to mind are Astar Network, which is very big in Asia, especially Japan, but not only Japan. And then Centrifuge, which is very big in the US and Western Europe as the industry leader for RWA, real world assets. They're both built fundamentally using Polkadot technology, and they're connecting back to the relay chain, which is also very important. But we don't have like a big winner that's obvious yet of a company that was built elsewhere and then came to Polkadot and got better. And if you know about Scytale a little bit, you'll know that we invested a huge portion of our existing fund into Mythical Games. And part of that investment was to welcome them to the Polkadot ecosystem. They're about to start the migration of their state. So they've already launched their parachain. The first big part of the migration of their state to their Polkadot parachain should be by July 26th. So we're speaking today is the 17th. So just a little bit more than a week. We will hopefully have some very good news about a successful company coming over to Polkadot and getting even more successful because of it.
Okay, and there are a lot of opportunities in Polkadot ecosystem. So talking about your fund, your fund gonna be start working in October, right? So you can talk about, what kind of projects you like most.
Sure. So just a little bit of history. So we've been working closely with the Web3 Foundation since we made the investment into the seed round. And we even had advisory at one point with them. We were providing some advisory. And so one of the criticisms from startups is that there's not much capital in the Polkadot ecosystem. And so we brought outside capital from our investors. We invested in a Polkadot ecosystem with the existing fund, and we've built a reputation and track record within the ecosystem as value adders, like adding value to the ecosystem by our activity. And with the decentralization of parity, which happened last year, that became even not only more important, but also more possible. When so many things were running through parity, then nobody else wanted or really could do much. And now the role of an ecosystem fund can be even more viable, let's say. So yeah, we see a lot of opportunities in the ecosystem. We just got off a call with our head of research. The pipeline is overflowing. And so, as we launch the fund, hopefully by October, maybe a bit sooner, maybe a bit later, we'll be deploying capital even before that. Because teams are actually starved for capital in the ecosystem. So we're really, really thrilled to have been able to have the Web3 Foundation have enough confidence in us that we're going to be good stewards of their capital, and we will invite other DOT-centric investors to join the fund as well. The mandate of the fund will be dual mandate. One is to add value to the DOT ecosystem and the DOT token itself, and also profit. So both of these criteria have to be fulfilled to get an investment, but either side is what's really important. And so it's going to be DOT denominated. So investors will put DOT into the fund, and it'll be very low fee. So hopefully DOT will appreciate by a lot, and hopefully partially because of our activity in the ecosystem, but there won't be any performance fee charged on the DOT side or on the liquid side. And then when we make venture investments, then that'll be like a standard venture capital model.
Okay, cool. So how do you choose a project you want to invest? What are the biggest considerations?
Well, we do a whole due diligence. But it always starts and ends with the founding team. Really. And so it's kind of more of an art than a science there, because no matter what the conditions are today, there will always be difficult times and adversity. And it's really hard to predict how someone will behave when the going gets really tough. And the teams that are super successful are the ones that always adhere to their principles, do the right thing, and work 3 times as hard when things get like super difficult. And so that's what we're really measuring for. That's what we're really looking for from the founding teams. And, luckily or unluckily, it's kind of been that situation in the Polkadot ecosystem. So you have to be absolutely hustling. You have to be very resilient. You have to be tough, and you have to keep going, especially after the last, let's say, few years in the ecosystem. And in crypto in general, it's been a bear market.
Okay, after you invest a project, how do you help them?
Well, the easy answer is it depends, right? So where do they have strengths, and where can they use some help? And that's what we really try to do. So maybe you saw that we got involved in Poke. I think maybe you'll ask about that, but that's a good example of one of the things that we can do and have done is act as a business development arm. We do token workshops with the teams. We do advisory, business advisory. All kinds of things, but it really depends on what. So when we invest in something that's great on the technology side, then we're not really going to be able to help that much on the technology. Maybe they're great on the business side, and they'll need tech support, and then we can provide that. So it really depends on the situation, where the team's strengths are, and where they need some support.
For a fund that mainly focus on Polkadot, there are not so much kind of fund. Many funds, they are investing in many ecosystems. So what do you think is the biggest challenges currently facing Polkadot? Because it's very important for investing and focus on Polkadot.
Yeah, absolutely. So most funds will be multi-ecosystem. The Scytale Horizon 2, which is the active fund now, which just finished its investment period, is a multi-ecosystem fund. It has investments in other things besides Polkadot. It just has most of it in Polkadot for the reasons that I said before. But Polkadot has a special set of challenges, right? So if you meet an investor, unless they invested in Polkadot in a private round or before, they're not that interested. And even if they did invest, they may not be that up to date with the developments in Polkadot. Because let's face it, Polkadot launched to a lot of hype into a bull market. Prices were very high, and the price is down. I mean, I think it's still like 80-something% off of the all-time high, and has not rebounded in line with the market. Right, it's out of the top 10. It's not close to the top 10 right now, even though the technology, in my mind, is top, better than others. The other pieces are not there. The investor degen community is not there because there's not a lot of things for degens to do. There's no farming of airdrops. There will be a big airdrop coming, but you couldn't farm it, right? The point is not to have this kind of get rich quick mentality and then disappear onto the next thing. This is really about building sustainable business models for the future. And so I think one of the main roles of having the ecosystem fund will be to invite co-investors that are cross-chain investors. So we're actively talking to them now. We'll be sharing research with them once the fund is up and ready. And we'll invite them. So we view Polkadot as being like a sort of big tent type of project where the more participants, the better for everyone. We want to have a much, much bigger pie. And I will support the Web3 Foundation as well to allocate capital to other funds that will also invest in the ecosystem. We don't want to be the only ones doing it. And we're happy that we were the first one selected by the Web3 Foundation, but I think there should and will be more.
Okay. And Polkadot is really different. When you invest in other ecosystems, you will considering the technology. But when you invest in Polkadot, you have to considering the OpenGov as well, because it affects the decisions a lot. So I noticed that you, at the Decoded, you organized the small meetings on establishing a treasury accountability system. Why you are doing this, and do you have any conclusions to share with us?
Well, first of all, the why is because it's like obviously necessary. If you look at the report that made Polkadot famous and had everybody talking about it, it's probably more effective than any of the marketing that has been done, was because it wasted money on marketing. Now, I don't say it's purely wasted. I think there should be like a lot of marketing, but the effectiveness is questionable and the accountability is zero, or not zero, but close to zero. So I thought it would be cool to make something fun, or try to make something fun out of something that will be difficult, right? Because nobody wants to have accountability. And so we kind of made a tongue-in-cheek kind of name called the Polkadot Accountability and Improvement Network, otherwise known the House of PAIN. So because it's going to be painful, right? But if we can make it painful in a fun way, to really let proposers to the Treasury know that they're going to be held accountable for what they promise, and then even have a sort of filtering or at least the best practices. Well, if you propose to the Treasury, what is going to be the tangible result? How is that beneficial for Polkadot? And how we're going to be able to measure that. And if they're not going to be able to do that, then it'll probably be much harder to get something approved by Treasury, right? Because then it'll be out there and they'll really have to explain why, they can't say why something is better for Polkadot. And it can't be like, well, because it's cool or because I think so. And now there's a Cayman entity that's been set up with its legal mandate to follow the directive of what OpenGov says, and can be a counterparty on contracts to hold those asking for big amounts of money, like legally accountable as well. So I think it's absolutely necessary. We do have a nice treasury. We can spend it all with no effect, which would maybe help the dot price short term because of excitement, but then is not beneficial for the long-term health of the ecosystem. And we're in it for the long term, right? So, we know that this is not a project built for the next bull run and then it's going to disappear. This is something built to be a foundational support for making the internet a better place. And we're fully on board with that.
I think it's hard to set a standard, right? Because different proposals, they have different standards. How do you measure the PR? Like, you post some...
It's a good question. We don't have it yet. So this was just the first, so Polkadot Decoded, I thought would be a good place to get everybody together. Well, not everybody, but some participants together to brainstorm about it. This is not something that's going to come out in the next day. I don't have a master plan. I don't even want it to be me or Scytale really driving this, but we want to be a part of it. And it should be a collective effort, and it will be a cost center. Because another principle we have is that people should not work for free. And so there needs to be, if somebody's actually putting in work, they need to be compensated somehow for their time and for their effort, and also themselves be held accountable. So, there's this whole thing, and it works for the human psyche. If you think somebody's watching you, you're going to act and behave very differently than if you think you're just completely anonymous or nobody's paying attention. And it's worked very well for religions for thousands of years, because God is watching you and you better behave and do the right thing. But it also works for governments as well. If you think the government is paying attention to what you're doing, you're not going to do things that are illegal. And so, not that people doing anything illegal, but I think the standards may not have been as high, or because there was no concept of accountability, and it's something that's absolutely necessary.
I hope it can go very well and quickly, because from the calculation, the treasury can last for 2 years only.
I know. Well, that's, that calculation is correct. Up to a point, the treasury will always replenish itself, right? So it gets a portion of the inflation, and we'll always get a portion of inflation. So it'll never go to zero. But if we go down to spend 100% of what's there and then just go on the inflation, then it won't have very much to spend on an ongoing basis until it's built up again. So we need to be good stewards as a community of the treasury.
That's good. Hope it really can solve the problems, because it's really, people are talking about this. It's really a problem that have to be solved to make sure the long term of the OpenGov and Polkadot. So, and besides the investing, you also started a project with Qt. So tell us about the project.
Yeah, so the acronym is POKE, P-O-K-E, and it stands for Polkadot Key Account Unit. And so as I mentioned, we were doing business development anyway for our portfolio, and I end up being in a lot of conversations that I just simply I don't have any resource to follow up on. And especially if it's outside of the portfolio, it's really hard to justify to do something for these projects. So Ingo thought, given OpenGov, or actually decentralized futures, one of the useful things that we could do, especially, so he's a very senior professional in Europe. and worked at a large company and has government contacts, and they work with the government and all of that. And with Parity being decentralized, and especially business development being decentralized, it was time for the community to step up. And if Decentralized Futures was providing resources for that, then we thought we would be well placed to be effective if we had some more resources. So that's the idea. So Ingo and his team cover Europe. We largely cover Middle East, but we can do anything anywhere. And we really want to collaborate with other business development programs that have come up. And some head ambassador, William, maybe you know him. He was formerly with Signet. And he stepped up and wants to coordinate. And so we're leaning into that. And so go for it, man. Let's coordinate this. It's very early, but we don't have the luxury to have a 3 and 6 month wrap up period. We have to hit the ground running. And so we already have some very good incoming. We've been working with a few of the parachains and Web3 Foundation itself to have what can we actually offer to large corporates? What can we offer to governments? And what can we do to attract large corporates to the Polkadot ecosystem?
Okay. Oh, that's great. And I think to wrap up our interview, let's talk about something, fancy, which is Trump. And we have to talk about it because, when the gunshot happens, all the market is rising and the drop from the bullish. So, from the bearish. So, and he will attending the Bitcoin conference. So what's your perspective on, Trump's participation in Bitcoin conference or his policy towards crypto industry, the impact?
Yeah. So you could say a lot of things about Trump, both negative and positive. But one positive thing I would say is that he's very pragmatic, right? He's somebody who wants to get things done and finds a way to get things done. So in the beginning, he was not, like when he was president, he wasn't very pro-crypto. He didn't block a lot of stuff either. The way the current administration in the US is an absolute disaster. I mean, it's an absolute disaster. They're embarrassing themselves. They're losing in court. The SEC should never lose in court, and they lose in court. So it just says like they're completely out of touch with what's correct practices and even what's legal. And at least the courts in the US still work. With Trump, him going to the Bitcoin conference is just him. In my opinion, it's him trying to get popularity. This is, many Americans hold crypto. This is an important topic for them. And then to block the will of the people is the opposite of what politicians should be doing. In the US, the US politicians should absolutely follow the will of the people and enact laws for what the people want and not try to take away what the people want. So I think with Trump and maybe more importantly, his vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, who actually is very knowledgeable on crypto and called out the SEC chairman for bad practice. I think it can't be worse for blockchain and crypto than the current administration. And the real question is, how much better can it be? And the answer can be a lot better, but I don't know if they're willing to go that far because the more adoption crypto has, the more control people have over their own resources. And then it means that also that the government has less control. And I think no government really wants to have less control rather than more. So that will only be the kind of unstraight answer that it'll be much better than it is now, but I don't expect it to be anything close to what it could be.
Great. Policy is hard to say.
Yeah. I mean, look at Polkadot. It's well and truly a decentralized autonomous organization. And we see all the growing pains of these things happening. And we see a lot of off-chain actors springing up to help shepherd it in the right direction.
Yeah, that's all the good things to happen. So I think we've talked a lot about your fund and your project and the Polkadot challenge and opportunities. And hope that our community loves our conversation and may everything about you and your fund, your project a great success.
Hey, thank you so much, Kristen. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak with you.